That's what you're saying is exactly the truth, though. And that's the way I always looked at it. Was I started praying to God and believing in something, but you know, the Hindu guy I know down the street that's a super peaceful dude has an amazing restaurant that I eat at, and his kids are
Yes.
great, and he treats me and my daughter like
Yeah.
family when we walk. What, I'm supposed to judge him because he believes in something completely different than what my Catholic church? No, I'm not going. I'm not doing that.
Jim Brewer.
Jim
Jim
Brewer.
Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer.
Hey, this is Jim Brewer.
What's up? Again. How you doing, Mike?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So today I'm having this guy, and this is how this starts, and this is what I tell everyone. You could reach out to me on Instagram if you direct message. A lot of times I check those messages. If you just write, "Hey man, I love you," and blah blah blah, it's like, okay, I'll give you the thumbs up and thank you for your kind words and all that. So today's guest, there's a lot to him. It started off with this.
Hey, Jim, huge fan, always. I used to see you a bunch at the Comedy Connection in Faneuil Hall. I worked there as a door guy back in the day, and I literally used the Comedy Connection as a networking platform for me to launch my career as a filmmaker and actor, with some unique success coming where I come from. I hear you on other podcasts, and I hear your mindset on things, and I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate the way you speak out about things. I just heard that Rob Schneider is going to be on your podcast. He's actually always doing his post-production over at the studio I work at in Los Angeles, Sugar Studios. And my good friend Paul, who's my editor, is also Rob's editor. I'd love to share with you a little bit more about me, and maybe connect with you in the future, my man. Maybe get involved in some things together. Again, appreciate you and your words and just being you.
Then I got another one.
Jim, I would be more than
This
honored
is later.
to do a podcast
We talked.
with you, and I'd love to potentially involve you in some of the things that I have going on if you were interested. And I think you would, because I think we're on the same page with a lot of things, and a lot of the content that I'm creating and putting out is touching on these things, especially Big Pharma. My story ties back to me being one of the original Oxy bandits, robbing pharmacies for OxyContin, had a near-death experience, turned my life around, wrote a movie about it called Oxymorons that was on Netflix, and so the story goes. I'd love to talk more about it for sure. My info is above. Let's connect.
So we kept going back and forth.
What's going on, Jim? Last thing I want to do is be a haunt, but below I'm going to attach my EPK just so you can learn a little bit more about me. Like I said, huge fan, known you since the Comedy Connection days when I was just a door guy there. I fought my way out of the gutter, bro. I'd love to come on the podcast, like you said, and talk about shop, talk about the OxyContin epidemic and how that was like one of the early phases of dumbing down the fucking population with the pharmaceutical drugs to where we're at now, man. And your platform's got a great audience for me to kind of talk about the shit I know, and we can go over it first and stuff. Reach back, hit me back either way, even if it's not going to work out, just so I know, man. And take care. God bless you.
And Johnny was super persistent, kept sending me all his clips and all that.
Hey, Jim.
Finally.
Happy New Year, man. I hope your 2024 is kicking
And I
ass
reached
already
out.
for you.
We kept going back and forth.
I just wanted to revisit what we spoke about back in September.
Yes.
Potentially doing the podcast with you.
Finally.
And talk.
We finally got him. I don't remember him as the door guy but clearly he was Faneuil Hall, but I'm sure he'll remind me of some of those things. And he actually has gone on to do pretty incredible human stuff, which is helping a lot of human beings. So with that said, this is Boston Johnny Hickey. What's up, Johnny?
What's up, Jim? Thank you, my man. Appreciate you big time.
Yeah, I just relate to guys like you. I feel like guys from Boston, and I feel like Boston and Long Island are very, in my opinion, very, very similar because it's very real, raw, honest, blue collar, just thick of the thick of human, just beating the snot out of life and trying to get by. And a lot of us slip in the cracks, and some of us go on and do things. But you do have this crazy journey. How did the comedy connection refresh my memory?
Okay, so we'll go back to you. I remember protecting your dad from people handing him drinks. You came to
Oh,
me.
oh my God!
Yeah,
You were
that's
oh
me. That's me.
oh
Yeah.
my God! I gotta find the footage of this. I
Mm-hmm.
just saw this. So good. Finish
Yep.
what you're gonna say, Johnny, because then I'll tell
So,
everyone.
so I was there for all that. I remember. I think he was like he was you trying to either not let him drink too much or he was in sobriety at the time. And so that was like one of the first shows I worked with you. So I was just a door guy at the Comedy Connection when I came out of my street life. And what happened was my dream as a kid was to be an actor, a filmmaker. That was my ambition as, all the way until about 17.
Yeah.
My early adolescence completely deterred me from ever thinking I could be sitting here doing any of the things that I do now.
Right.
Uh, Fast forward through all this crazy stuff that happened to me when I was trying to like audition and do things and get involved in the industry. I was like, I can't, this is never going to work. I have to get into a network. And I remember my cousin, Mike, worked at the Comedy Connection years before that. And he had pictures on his wall of like, him and Jim Carrey, this guy, all these
Yeah.
famous
All the
comedians.
guys that made it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was connected to them. He had like a personal relationship with some. I said, that's the only way that I'm going to be able to like network. So my connection into what I do now, which has really nothing to do with comedy, but is from the Comedy Connection. I,
Right.
I connected with James Gandolfini through a comedian that was friends with him on my first screenplay. Lenny Clark connected me with Dennis Leary's company. So all these things, Bill Burr became a friend of mine and supported me, and all these. Patty Ross plays my mom in my first film. So everything that kind of revolves around what I do now stems from that $12 an hour door guy job at the Comedy Connection.
Wow. And the one thing that Johnny's talking about is so I want to say my dad was mid 80s, somewhere around there, maybe low, and basically I had a tour bus, and I was bringing the bus back to New Jersey that night, and I had to fly out early in the morning. So I really needed some sleep. And my father couldn't really he would drink and he'd have to pee every 15 minutes. He needs help. I think at that time he just started struggling with walking and all this stuff. So I bring him to the Comedy Connection, and I tell people like Johnny, I'm like, listen, my father, all he does, everyone thinks he's adorable, but he keeps asking for beer, and everyone gets a beer. And then guess what? I'm dealing with a 200-pound 225 wasted 85-year-old that can't walk. And I got to get up if every 10, 15 minutes to lift him up, get him to the toilet. Then he pisses all over. I'm dry heaving. I got to clean the toilet, which is what happened that night. So we actually, I don't know if it was my one of the guys I was with that started, someone was feeding him drinks.
I think everybody was. I think it was like, oh, it's Jim's dad, and he asked for a drink, and everyone was like, here you go, free drinks.
Right. So now were you part of carrying him down the stairs? We had to
I
carry
believe
him.
so, yeah.
We had to carry him down the stairs. I had a camera guy. He's howling with laughter. We had to get him across the street to that hotel.
Millennium Hotel.
Yes.
Millennium.
Right. And then even there, I was going to get a bag cart and put him on the cart because he conked out 20 feet past the Comedy Connection. And so we're trying to hold up this old man. And was I pissed? I was trying to keep my shit together. But then I have footage of me walking him to the toilet in the hotel at like 3 a.m. I was so fucking pissed. The whole bus ride home. I gotta pee. The bus is shaking as when I gotta get. Oh my God. I remember that day like yesterday. It was one of the funniest days ever. But I remember I was so pissed.
I forgot about it. And then when Margaret reached out to me, and Margaret reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we're gonna get you on the show and stuff." I just started going in my memory, of like detailed things of the Comedy Connection, because I remember like Harlan Williams was at the Kowloon up on Route One, and I thought it was you, and I was like, "No, that was Harlan." And they were gonna like mug him, and I had to walk him to his hotel across Route One because it's kind of seedy up there, up that end of
Yes.
the North Shore of
Yes.
Boston. So I had
Yeah.
to like me and my brother had to walk him over to his hotel, and then I remembered the thing with your dad. I was like, oh, they were trying to give him the booze, and we had to stop everybody that night. He was losing his mind. Yeah.
Losing his mind. I was gonna kill him. That and the women. I'm like, this guy, I'm gonna knock his ass out. I'm gonna knock his ass out. So Johnny, then I was really intrigued too when you told me about the whole drug thing. So when did you leave Boston, or are you starting to make films there, and then you head out to LA? What happened there?
So
Because
when I was
yeah.
so when I was at the Comedy Connection, that prior to that, I had been. That's when at the Comedy Connection was my like. That was the only job I could get that I was happy with, and then I was going to community college for like media and video to try to learn the aspects of like getting into that world.
Yeah.
And I was writing this screenplay in the back of the Comedy Connection every day, and that's why the mother in Oxymorons name's Patty, because Patty Ross, the Boston comic, would get up on stage, and I was like, man, if I ever make this movie, she's playing my mom. She's so Boston. And sure enough, she ends up playing my mom in the movie. And so I was writing in this notebook in the back when you were performing and everyone was,
Yeah.
I was just always in the back writing these notes, writing, had no idea what I was doing. And I met Lenny Clark, the comedian from Boston.
Lenny Clark. Let me tell
Lenny
you
Clark.
something, Johnny Hickey. Lenny
So he just
Clark.
played my so
Yeah.
he just played my dad in my most recent film that's not released yet, that's releasing this year. And Lenny read what I like this 20 pages I had on a notebook and was like, let me get somebody to help you. So he connected me with someone at Apostle Pictures in New York, which was Dennis Leary's company because they're
Yep.
buddies.
Yep.
And this guy,
Serpico and Dennis. Yeah.
yeah, yep. So they taught me, someone at that company taught me, this guy Doug taught me how to professionally write a screenplay, like, 80 to 120 pages, the first 10, exteriors and all this stuff that I would have to go to Emerson to learn. And, fast forward while I'm working at the Comedy Connection, I now have a feature length screenplay. And I'm, showing it to, different people, and people are like, oh my God, this is so. And it was basically taking all the trauma and negative shit I went through with OxyContin and my experiences with that and drugs, and turning it into a story to help show the collateral damage of like what this drug at that time was doing to people. And people was still, even still to this day, some people are blind to it, which amazes me. But at that moment, like people didn't understand that OxyContin was heroin in a pill
Yes.
form. They
Yeah.
just thought it was a painkiller. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
okay. FDA approved. They said it won't make anybody addicted.
Mm.
And sure enough, where I'm from, Charlestown, part of Boston, more bank robbers per square capita than anywhere else in the country. You come from a place where all your uncles and your dads and everything that's they're criminals. That dates back to history of there's reasons why to that this state prison was there, and that's why Irish veterans moved there, because their family members were in the prison. So all these prison mentalities came in. The
Mm.
IRA funded the criminals of the town with guns to go get money and rob banks for them, and that's why the movies like The Town exist. So
Wow.
if all our dads were dentists, we'd all be pulling teeth. That's what we always say, but they weren't. They were bank robbers and criminals. So scheming, how to hustle, how to make money. And I fell out of course and got into, the street life. And there were these pills going around that were like $50 to $80 a whack. People were paying for them. Like, what is that? I don't know. I was a raver. I was doing like ecstasy and messing around with different stuff, but I was never really an addict. I was just
Right.
partying and caught up in the mix of things, and started giving people these pills and selling these pills and robbing pharmacies eventually to get these pills to people. And when I ended up in jail, I realized that holy shit, this stuff is turning everyone started coming in within a 3-year period and went out on heroin. No one was ever on heroin. No one, like in Boston, nobody did heroin. Some veterans did it that came home from the war years ago, but heroin was frowned upon on the streets always. Even with like the mobs and it's like, why is everyone on heroin? And it was, the next best thing, if not the better thing than the OxyContin.
Mm.
And then I did my research and was like, wait a second, this is an opiate-based pill. It's basically 13 Percocets and a time release that you just lick off. So you're literally the equivalent to shooting 2 bags of heroin, taking one of these pills. So I decided to, you know, make a story to expose this.
And see, it's interesting because I remember that time, and I had a family member had issues with their back very young. He was very young. And the next thing you know, he was addicted to Oxycontin. And he had to go away to uh, like a halfway house up. It was
Hmm.
like, oh, you either go to jail or you can try to make it at this halfway house. And he went to the halfway house, which I also believe was uh, in maybe Connecticut or something like that. And that was one of the things I saw too back then. I'm like, wait a minute, like, it's everyone's on Oxycontin. They're passing around heroin. They're passing around heroin, and they're pushing this as the new cure for everything. And everybody was getting addicted. And then it started hitting the streets and people stealing for it and all that. Um, Johnny, did you ever look at? I just heard something interesting. I was talking to a veteran from Afghanistan, and he was saying, I started reflecting, and he goes, I joined because I bought into the whole 9/11 thing. And he goes, and then I was over there and I found myself really just protecting the opium fields because they had us protecting the
That's
opioid
what
fields. And that
that's what it
made
was
me,
all about.
and then I made me go, I, I find it extremely disturbing, extremely interesting that during that time that we went to Afghanistan, which I'm not sure anyone knows why we really went into Afghanistan, the biggest opioid, I believe, farms in the world was out of
Mhm.
Afghanistan. And we also
Was.
had, and I could be wrong by saying this, I please look it up. Don't count on what I say. One of the worst heroin times we ever had in America. So how, I just reflect on that and I go, how are we in a war on quote terrorism? We're having the worst opium time in America, and those are the fields we're protecting in Afghanistan. And that also goes into my whole rage against, you trust this government, you trust our pharmaceutical, you trust Fauci, you really, I mean, that's how easy it is to manipulate humanity and get them sick and get them drugs.
Well, I started questioning everything as I moved. Like at first, it was just about okay, this particular pill is bad, and this company that's and I was writing the CEO of Purdue Pharma and telling him I was going to show up at his house. I was out of my mind because I had lost so many people at this point. I lost my sister, my best friend, my cousin, and then all the way up until a week ago. I think I tagged you in the post where I went to the
Mm-hmm.
cliff that I was thrown off of, and that was where I kind of changed my life.
Yep.
And that week, right after the holiday, my other friend who had been clean and in Florida and in like the drug rehab like world of like helping addicts get clean, relapsed after the holidays with a family member, and he's dead because
Oh,
now it's
wow.
Russian roulette. Now it's fentanyl. Now you don't get the pills. Now you don't even get heroin. Now it's just China pushing fentanyl into the country. And when you talk about the poppy fields that we were protecting, had a friend that did two tours in Afghanistan, Iraq. He told
Yep.
me the same thing. And what I didn't realize until I did research was like Johnson and Johnson, who makes our fucking baby shampoo, was invested in all these poppy fields over there. And I went down the rabbit hole and started going deeper and deeper. And I was like, wait, why did the FDA, who we trust to, and before, like really now after COVID, for this awakening to kind of happen where a lot of
Yes.
people start opening
Thank
their eyes
God.
and be
Thank
like,
God.
oh wait, Kellogg was a psycho and put stuff in food to like make boys not boys kind of thing. You have to. It sounds so out there to
It's
people
it's
that they don't.
it's Johnny, it sounds like something out of the Avengers. And I keep telling people like it is. You don't believe that these crazy evil beings exist. They do. And they run everything you trust. And the
They do.
reason why evil finds ways to manipulate, and they find the platforms where you trust them. They'll find the church, they'll find the school, they'll find the FDA, they'll find pharmaceutical, and they'll find your politics, government, police. They find everything. Criminals are brilliant. They're on a drive, they're brilliant. They don't care. They don't care. And people think just because they have a suit and tie or they're a specialist or they say they're from the pharmaceutical or the FDA, oh, I'm just going to trust them. And that's the worst thing you can do in any society moving forward at this moment in time. So can I ask you, how do you clearly had an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sober up from that? How do you, because your numbers, I would assume the success rate is less than 10% from what I've
It's like
seen with heroin.
it's like 2% is what it is with opiates.
How do you
With
how do you survive that 2%? And do you still once in a while like fucking just
So I look at things first of all not like apples and oranges to me because the war on drugs is a bunch of bullshit as we
of
know, right? So
course.
I'm very cannabis friendly. I smoke weed. I was smoking weed the whole time I wrote oxymorons, and I couldn't even tell people because I was like, oh, they're gonna judge me and think that
Right.
I'm still on
Right.
drugs. But
Right.
it like drinking booze is worse than smoking a doobie. I'm sorry, like that.
100%.
And what we feed children in high schools and middle schools even is that it's all one thing. It's drugs are bad. So now you got kids that maybe want to smoke weed and they're going to ignore all this other stuff that you're telling about, stuff that will kill them
Mhm.
because you're lumping cannabis in with heroin and
They've
coke and
been doing
crack.
that. They've been doing that forever. They've been doing that
Right.
forever, Johnny. Yeah.
So what happened to me was I was watching people die, one, and I was watching people become heroin addicts. And I did 3 years and got locked up for 3 years, got out, went right back, went right back into the streets, right back into, getting in trouble and doing crazy things and just wanted to, give up because like what else was there for me to do? I had no hope in my soul at all.
Yeah, you
And so
already
I went
lost, so why not
already lost.
yeah.
So I went to a hotel party one night in Quincy, Mass, which is like south of Boston, at a hotel party. The night before that, I was in a stolen car that had no reverse, and we had to push the car out after my friend stabbed some kid in the face with a Heineken bottle 10 times. Like this is the
Oh.
life I was living. Jim,
Oh,
like I look back at things and I'm so blessed that I could take all that negative stuff and turn it into the positive stuff that I do now. But when I look back at the stuff that I was involved in, even like walking you to your hotel, like you would have never known those things about me.
no.
Those things happened before I met you,
Yep.
and so a fight erupted in this hotel room. And the hotel security came up and they're like, listen, everyone out, the cops are coming. So everybody runs out to this parking lot, but we're in another town, me and my brother and one other friend. So there's three of us, and they call their friends, and 13 kids show up in carloads in this parking lot of the Marriott Hotel. My friend he's crazy. The same kid that stabbed the kid in the face with the bottle, he runs into the melee of like these kids that want to fight us and
Yeah.
just starts swinging. There's no way we're winning this fight. Like
Right, but
we're out. But
he's nuts.
this kid, he's still alive too, and I don't know how to this day. He is out of his mind.
Yeah.
And so I'm in this position where my brother's younger than me at the time, and I'm like, if I don't jump in and help him, I'll never in the streets. I'll never live this down. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have beef with him for leaving him to get jumped. I'm gonna be the kid that ran away. So I was like, probably gonna get my ass kicked, but I'm gonna go in, and swinging. So I went in swinging, and I woke up 7 days later in Boston Medical Center.
Wow. They
Yep.
stomp you
So
out?
they hit me. Someone hit me in the back of the head with a rock or a brick.
Yeah.
I remember I went into the circle and I looked for the biggest dude there, like
You went right
who's
after
the
him.
alpha. And
Right.
I sucker punched him, and I got him good, and he wobbled down.
Yeah.
And for maybe 3 seconds is the last thing I remember is like standing with my hands up and just like looking at them like who's next, and then out cold. Like I don't remember a single thing. So what happened was they hit me in the head with the brick, and then when my friend was getting jumped on the ground, I remember he was holding on to like a shrub. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why is he holding on to that? I couldn't understand. It was so fast. Like, why isn't he getting up and fighting? And he was holding a shrub. His white T-shirt was all of a sudden filled with blood. And he was on the shrub because they were trying to drag him off the edge of this cliff. The Marriott Hotel at the time didn't put a fence up. They built them on these quarries where there's a 5-story drop down into this industrial where I was in that video. And so they threw me off. After they got me on the ground, they dragged me, threw me off the cliff. These
Wow.
kids, yeah. So I wake up 7 days later, out of a coma. I am pissed in the bag. I got my knees in traction, dislocated my hip, separated my pelvis, my bladder exploded, tore my urethra. Was told I'd never walk again, never be able to use the waist down again. And I was on the morphine 6-minute drip, which is heroin.
Right.
Every 6 minutes, I get to hit this button. I feel this warm sensation of it. Now, I've never done heroin. I never stuck a needle in my arm. I was always able to get pills.
Right.
However, I had to get pills. I was never at that level of addiction, not being able to get them however I got them.
Sure.
So I never, and that was my biggest fear, though, was becoming a heroin addict. I killed my sister. I never wanted to do that.
Oh, wow.
So I would hit this button, and it was so different than taking a pill. It was this warm feeling, and it would kill the physical pain, but it was so temporary, which is why it's every 6 minutes. The physical pain would go away very briefly, but what bothered me the most when I would hit that button was the fact that I did not care how I got where I was at that moment, and that I would never walk again and never be able to use the waist down and have children or anything. So I ripped the morphine out of my arm, and I was having these crazy nightmares too, like crazy
Super
things going on.
vivid and yeah.
Yeah, like one of the biggest dreams was I was dying of thirst, and I woke up in the hospital, and that was because I was being fed through the tube, I believe. I was being fed through the tube, and I had these Haitian nurses, and the third shift nurses, that were like really mean. They were really kind of like, for whatever reason, they were ruder than the first shift and second shift nurses. They were awful.
Yeah.
And one of them was extra mean to me, and she wouldn't wash me. She was supposed to wash me, and she wouldn't wash me in the mornings because I couldn't wash myself. And so I woke up, and I'm like, I just need to get out. And I ran out of the hospital, even though I couldn't run, and my legs were working. So it's like that dream where you can fly almost,
Yeah.
Went into the 7-Eleven, or the store 24 at the time, was what it was, across the street, and there was one chocolate quick in this case in my dream, and I opened it, and it was ice cold, and that's all I wanted was that chocolate quick, and I grabbed it, and I went to drink it, and it melted in my hand, and there was that nurse was behind it, all demonic looking, laughing at me, like a demon, crazy, right?
Right.
So I wake up, and I rip the morphine out. I'm like, I don't want this. I don't, you know what I mean? This is
Yeah.
what's doing it. I don't want no painkillers. I don't want to leave. And I'm like, they're not going to give me this when I go home. Whenever they let me go home,
Right.
I'm going to be a heroin addict. And Jim, I tell you, there's this guy next to me in the bed, in the room with me, and he's in like, there's like a curtain between us, and he's talking to me, and I move the curtain. Now, this isn't a dream. This is something I vividly remember, like like walking you to the hotel in the story with your dad. That it's not a dream to me. This.
Right.
And he's there for like an abscess tooth or something crazy, and he's going in to get it removed, surgeon. He's like, you need to pray. He's like, you need to pray to God. Even if you don't believe, you need to do it. And I promise you, if you do this, Johnny, you're going to get everything back. You will be able to walk. And I'm like, how do you even know like what my, he's like, oh, it's on the board right there. They take this guy away for his surgery.
Yeah.
I'm off the morphine. I have probably like 7 different medical professionals, doctors, nurses, practitioners telling me I need to be on Demerol or something. With my injuries, I need to be on a painkiller. And
Correct.
I say, absolutely not. And I have the documents to prove that I went cold turkey in the hospital for 30 days after I pulled the morphine out that day. So I went cold turkey with every excuse in the world to take painkillers and left with no painkillers. The guy that was next to me that told me to stop praying never came back to the room. And I said, what happened to the guy that was here? What did you, and the lady's like, what are you talking about? What guy? We don't do doubles in the room. So this guy allegedly was never, that I vividly remember, not as part of my dream, as part of reality, was never in the room. And so when that happened,
Wow.
I started praying. To whatever you believe, whatever God or whatever it is that people believe in, call it what you will. I don't force my thoughts and my beliefs on anything, but I started praying. And when I tell you, so 30 days went by, they wanted to keep me in the hospital. And I was like, this place is a joke. They're trying to keep me on the painkillers. The nurses are horrible. BMC, Boston Medical Center, is it's so bad. It's like the gunshot wound clinic. It's just like not the place to be in the middle of the winter. This was December. Now the whole month of December I was there. Christmas was gone by. I just wanted to get home with my family and try to do it from my mother's couch. Went home and I just manifested, Jim. I prayed and I in my mind, I knew how to walk again. So I would get a walker and I would drag myself and I would drag that leg that they said wouldn't work. And what they said was because my pelvis separated and I had all these other injuries, like when my bladder exploded and stuff, they couldn't wire it back together because my white blood cell count would notice it as an infection. And it was like a 70 something percent chance that I would die if they wired my pelvis back together. So my pelvis would heal like this. And the best result probably be that I'd walk on those stilts, like arm stilts, kind of,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
And again, God, whatever you believe and call it what you will, my pelvis went back to normal on its own. I can break dance now. I can do a handspring. I'm
I can
more
break
fit
that.
now than I was then. I'm no
Throw you
bullshit.
in a mosh pit now.
Yeah, right. So the doctor, one doctor, this guy Mike Nerney, I'll never forget him because he was cool and he was down to earth and not all programmed. Was like, well, he's like, miracles happen, and he's like, just like muscle has memory, I guess he goes, I guess sometimes bone can too. He's like, your pelvis somehow, and they couldn't explain it. They could not explain how my pelvis just went back to its original form.
So let me ask you this. So when you're all right, the guy tells you to pray, right? And so
Mhm.
are you now once in a while are you diving into a faith thing, or you just like you're when you feel the
I
need, like where you at, where what at this
now
time,
or at that moment, now or at that moment.
that moment, are you, I need to read a Bible, I need to blah blah blah, whatever, what exactly are you doing? Are you doing it every day? What
So what I would do every day is I would in the shower, literally after I would like wash my ass, I would get down on my hands and knees once I could get down on my hands and knees again when I wasn't in my bed no more, and I would just thank this God. And to me, even still now to this day, how I feel about it is God to me is what God is to me. God to you is it's one thing, you know.
right,
I'm not going to force. I don't get
right,
on a religion. I'm not
I'm
a
the same
Bible
way,
thumper.
I'm the
But
same
I
way.
believe that there is something above and beyond what we understand, whether it's in our own subconscious existence, whatever it is that Jim believes in, whatever it is that Johnny believes in, that is what it is. But if you don't have something to believe in and something to talk to in yourself,
Oh,
then or outside of yourself, then you're doomed.
I
And
highly agree, I highly
and how
agree.
could I not believe in whatever God I was praying to? I grew up Irish Catholic.
Right.
It's obviously there was all the stuff that happened in the churches and stuff that made you be like, and question your religion. And then you do your due diligence, you research religions and history and all that stuff. And you kind of like, I don't know what to believe.
Well, yeah, I always thought after watching that growing up, because all my friends were either Irish Catholic or Italian Catholic, and one German Protestant. But what I noticed was as time went on, these guys believe that and this one believe it. I thought that was one of the greatest secrets of the world is cult, whatever, the devil, a man who's looking to manipulate for power. They somehow formed organizations to keep you from the true power that we have inside us, whether it's Jesus or whatever you want to, it's energy, whatever you want to
The
manifest is,
universe, yeah.
whatever energy, whatever. All these quote religious things are created as a block to get you to the real source. Like, I don't need a guy with a funky hat and a robe to tell me how to get there. I push him away, go right to it. So
So that's what I did.
yeah, and
I,
if you really think about it, let's say it wasn't called the Catholic Church,
mhm.
right? We're just talking off subject just for a second. What a great way to control society. So a couple of us are going to pretend we're really, really awesome. We're going to get we're going to paint the place nice and play organs. And then we're going to get you to tell me all the worst things you did. And now I get to hold you through a little bit of guilt. And I also know where you stand, who I can manipulate, who I can talk to for money, who I can talk to, who I can sexually seduce, who I can take advantage of because their parents would never buy into that I went after their kid. It's a genius, dark, deceptive plan, in my opinion. I don't want to piss off all the Catholics, but at the
No,
end
it's
of the
true.
day, you know,
It's true. That's what you're saying is exactly the truth, though. And that's the way I always looked at it. Was I started praying to God and believing in something, but you know, the Hindu guy I know down the street that's a super peaceful dude has an amazing restaurant that I eat at, and his
yes,
kids are great, and he treats me and my daughter like
yeah.
family when we walk. What, I'm supposed to judge him because he believes in something completely different than what my Catholic church? No, I'm not going. I'm not doing that. It's
Same
that
thing. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
what they're
Sorry.
doing to us right. It's the same thing that they're doing to us right now, just in society. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. It's the same thing.
Same exact thing. If you take a Hindu, a Muslim, uh, Jewish, I haven't, whatever. At the end of the day,
Any
it's peace, beauty, understanding. Um, so okay, so now you're thanking God and you're working your way back. Is there temptations during this time in the first?
Oh yeah, it wasn't. I would say alcohol was probably my biggest like thing where like I would still drink, and I wasn't an alcoholic by any means, but I would be like at the comedy connection. I'd get into fights. Kind of one of the things, I had a lot of anger built up in me at that. Even though I had changed my life and I wasn't on drugs anymore, I was still struggling.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had I had a dream and something I wanted to accomplish that was the hardest thing for anybody to do, make a movie
yeah,
and be successful with it.
yeah,
So I had nothing else to fall back on. How long am I going to work at the Comedy Connection for as a door guy, or even when I was booking my own events up at the Kowloon? It was far and few between that would go and succeed the way I was able to. So I was always, that's one moment when you ask, like, was I, where I've been in a million of those things
yeah.
to where I got,
Okay.
and
I
even
think,
in LA.
yeah, I think it's important for people to know that because they'll sit there and I go, like, I just had a question today. We had someone in our house for a couple of years that was, you know, out of whatever. They went through some stuff, and this person asked, "How did you do with this relative coming straight out of a bad situation?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, they're great now, but no, there was a lot of up and downs. I had to threaten them. I physical. I threw a chair at. I mean, I had to confront work. I had to go to other people's houses. Like, get your shit. Let's go. You shut the. I'm not give. It's not easy. It's not an easy road. So when people see this, they have to understand you're still struggling at that time, even though you're on the better path. This is so. Wow. So now what is it, late 2000, like teens or whatever, where you kind of first launch your first big
2000
project? Yeah.
2010. So 2010 is when I finally put all the pieces together. When I say all the pieces, I saved money on my own, and then my friend David ran this media company in Las Vegas. But right before the media company, remember Frank Santarelli?
Yeah.
From Okay, so
So funny.
Frank, so he's in The Sopranos at the time and doing events still. The Sopranos still going. He brings my screenplay and somehow it ends up in James Gandolfini's lap. So James Gandolfini calls me and says, "I want to talk to you about optioning your screenplay, Oxymorons." And
Wow.
of all places, we meet at the Kowloon, not because of the comedy relationship there. He likes Chinese food, and it's like one of the top Chinese food restaurants on the East Coast. At the
Okay.
time, on
Yeah.
this day probably. And so I bring James Gandolfini to the Kowloon, who already have a relationship with me, the owners there, because of the Comedy Connection had bought them out for 2 years, leased out that room, and they
Hmm.
were doing shows up there, and I worked there. So they love me because they love when celebrities come there and stuff. So I bring
Yeah.
in James Gandolfini. I sit down at a table with James Gandolfini, which is like probably one of the most surreal moments of my life.
Mm.
And he wants to take Oxymorons as a screenplay it is at that moment and make it. He wants to option it. He's going to give me 15 points on the back end, which equals nothing. Once you learn how the game works. But he's also going to give me 50 grand as a payment for the script to option it, which at
Okay.
the time to me was a
That's a lot of
big
money.
chunk. Me, for a kid from the streets, that, you know what I mean? 50
Yeah,
grand.
especially I mean, if you look at it in just logistics, how long it took you to write it and blah blah. Hey, it's 50 grand. That's
But I lived through it, and what he didn't want was me to be in the movie, and
mm,
he was going to take it and make it about kids in Hell's Kitchen and not Charlestown, my neighborhood, where these characters and any other screenplay I've ever wrote since then, 50 grand, take it. I'll write another one. This was my first screen. This is my baby, and I
uh,
looked at James Gandolfini at this table, and I was like, you know what, man? I believe in fate and destiny, and I don't want to do that. And James Gandolfini laughed at me when I said fate and destiny. He laughed at me at a table full of guys and was like, "Good luck with fate and destiny, kid." That's what he said to me.
wow.
And I was blown away by it. I was like, "What?" I was like, my dreams were shit. Every surrealness moment was just crushed, and it took everything at that moment for me not to flip the table at the Kowloon and lose my mind. But I didn't. I just kept my composure and was just like, I need to think and look at other options. Honored that you flew here from New Jersey to and love my story. But in my mind, I was like, if James Gandolfini, Tony Soprano,
That's right.
thinks that I have something,
Correct.
then I have something. And so
Correct.
we drove him to the airport, and right before he got into go up to the check in or whatever security, he stopped dead in his tracks. Swear to God and everything I love, turned around, looks at me, and goes, "Come here." And he goes, "You know what? What I said earlier about fate and destiny?" He's like, "I should have never said that to you. I was wrong." He's like, "I just want to say that to you." He ends up passing away like that the next year. Imagine that. I'll never forget. He thought about it before he walked away and was like, "I'm an asshole, and I should have never said that to that guy." He turns around, he says that to me, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like, my head blows up. And then it passes through the hands of Ed Bianchi, who's the director of The Wire on Showtime and a million other shows. And he wants to do the same thing. He wants to option. Everyone wants to take it from me.
Everyone
Nobody
wants to
wants to give
take it. Exactly. I can do this. I make it mine. I'll
it.
make the money the way I want. Right.
So then Maddie in the Morning on Kiss 108, which is like at the time.
Yeah, I know
Maddie,
Maddie
do
in
you
the
remember
morning.
Maddie in the Morning?
Yeah, of course.
This dude in Boston radio and whatever. He's
Big,
huge. His
big
producers call.
radio show. Yeah.
I'm living at my mother's house still at the time, and he calls me up and he's like, his producer calls me, Kendra, and she says, Maddie wants you on. She wants to know why James Gandolfini was here because it was in the Herald. Like they took pictures and they have pictures in the Boston Herald of me and Gandolfini potentially buying oxymorons. And what happened? So I go in and Maddie in the Morning. I tell him the story that I'm telling you right now. Like he came, he wanted it. I said no. They're like, you said no to
Yeah.
And Maddie kept me on for his producer said for longer than he's ever had anybody on his like morning show and just let me go without cracking a joke or anything.
Right.
And from that moment, what happened was I was living in the North End where all the Italians were, and I realized, wait, all these Italian dudes, they pay guys that are on The Sopranos, not Gandolfini, but like Santarelli and stuff. They pay them thousands of dollars to come and do an appearance at their restaurant. So now
Right.
all these guys are interested in my movie, and I end up getting them all these restaurant owners that end up being connected to my father, who I never knew. All these crazy things start to fall into place for me, and they all invest 10 grand, 20 grand, and I end up raising 150 grand in cash to shoot the movie.
Okay. Which is not a
I'm
lot.
in Vegas, not a lot, but I'm in Vegas, and I'm like, I need a name to be in the movie besides all the local people I got, and to play this crazy character. So I get this kid, Forrest Griffin, who's a UFC fighter at the time, on board.
Okay.
2 weeks after I get Forrest on board, he wins the light heavyweight title against Rampage Jackson. And I go from talking to Forrest on the phone to talking to his manager who wants 30 grand a week that I don't have.
Mm.
The former heavyweight champion of the UFC, Tim Sylvia, reaches out to me and is like, hey, I heard what happened. I'm actually from Maine, from New England. I had a football scholarship. I got hooked on Oxy.
Wow.
And I wanted to do a movie with you, and I'll fly out on my own dime.
Wow.
So I end up getting the former heavyweight champion of the UFC, who's got a cult audience for sure, to come out and play this role, and he kills it in the movie. It's the most non-gimmicky UFC fighter in a movie you'll ever see. I promise you that.
Wow.
And so now I got 150 grand cash. I got a UFC fighter. I also have a red camera, which nobody was shooting on. I understood the red camera at the time, which was the equivalent to shooting on film without having film, which is expensive.
Right.
Okay, and a DP that knew what he was doing and owned this camera. But the city, because of what I was doing, because I was telling that, I went to everybody and I said, I am trying to tell my story and turn my life around. OxyContin now at this point in 2010 has killed so many people, and it's now a red alert, the pharmacies. My movie isn't glamorizing this stuff. I'm showing you the grittiest, rawest death and collateral damage that this stuff is causing,
Mm,
and I want this to change people's lives and deter future generations from going down my path.
mm.
What can you do for me? I got Boston police cars, state police helicopters, the DEA in my movie playing DEA agents with their real gun. I literally had the DEA doing a raid scene in my movie with their guns. That I don't even know how legal this is, like kicking a door open and doing raid scenes with their real, semi-automatic weapons
Right,
pointed
right.
at in their real uniforms. Barnstable County, which is down the Cape, gave me the empty jail that they had to build a new jail because they couldn't house the amount of inmates they were typically housed in down the Cape because of the opiate-related death and crimes down there. They
Mhm.
need to build a whole new county jail. So the little county jail that they had was still sitting there. So they gave me the jail to shoot. I was walking around with master keys to a jail. So here I am. I was in jail. Now I have the master keys to a jail to film my movie about this chapter of my life.
Wow.
And so the equity that I raised, over a million easily, over $1 million in equity easily. When you watch Oxymorons and you know the budget now, and at first I didn't tell people the budget, I let people, use a mind of their own.
Right.
But when you watch it, you will not think 100. You'd be like, it's impossible to shoot in this many locations, this
Mm.
kind of stuff. So when I say that everybody stepped up to back me on this movie because of what it was, everybody stepped up.
Do you think that was because of the intention? Or
I
do you think
think
yeah.
so I had a friend that became a friend of mine that was a journalist. So I'm strategic in what I do. And
Yeah.
so when I would go to these places, I would like to the sheriff. So in Massachusetts, sheriffs run the jails. So like in Florida, if you drive by a sheriff speeding, he can pull you over and arrest you. If you drive by a sheriff here, you can flip him off and he can't do nothing. He's a correctional officer, or the actual sheriff is the warden of the jail here. It's different here.
Okay.
Police are police. Sheriff departments run the county jails. So I went to see the superintendent, which is like one under the sheriff in Boston County. And when I did so to get the jail, the chances of them giving me this jail was like, I was rolling the dice. I'm like, they're not going to give me that. I just wanted to use a section of it, never mind the whole jail.
Right.
And I would bring my journalist friend who was known, and he wrote for the Phoenix. Remember, I don't know if you remember the
Yeah,
Boston
of course, the
Phoenix.
Phoenix, yeah, the bus, yeah.
So he wrote the first story on me and everything when I was pre-movie, like when I was like trying to get it off the ground. And he would come with his notebook at the time, and he'd have his notes, and I'd be, this is my friend, he's a journalist for the Phoenix, he's writing the story about me. So nobody wanted to say no to me because they didn't want somebody
Right.
writing in
Right.
the Phoenix that,
Right.
here this guy is trying to turn his life around. He wrote a screenplay that James Gandolfini won, and all those things were already there. So I had like a mini press kit, say, at the time, of like things to back, like why we should make this movie. And I mean, it just like when I say all the pieces fell into place, the moon, the stars aligned, God, whatever you believe in,
Yeah.
call it what you will, it all came together for me, and my dreams came true. And I was selling out Showcase Cinemas, a local company which is owned by the Redstones, who own Paramount. It's the parent company of Paramount, Viacom, and all that.
Yep.
They gave me a test screening in Revere
Yep.
on Route 1, and I sold out a whole weekend, 5 shows on a Saturday, 5 shows on a Sunday. So then they gave me all their theaters in the state for a week, and I was the number 2 grossing movie for 2 weeks against 18 studio films in Massachusetts.
Wow.
So
So
all these
yeah. So all these things came together for you. Good God. So what are you doing now, Johnny Hickey?
I'm a full-time filmmaker. That's what I do now. I make movies. I work on different projects, a lot of horror movies and stuff just to keep the income going. But
Yeah, you like the horror.
all of my films as writer-director are all genre-driven to fight the drug epidemic. So my most recent film that came out during COVID, so we won a bunch of awards. It's called Habitual. It's a psychological drug horror about fentanyl, because now fentanyl is obviously the big
That's the new
demon.
one. Yep. Yep.
I mean, it's killing 100. It's killing 100. Imagine if an airplane crashed every day in Massachusetts.
No, I
New
know
York.
2 people already. I know two
All right.
2 people already.
So if a plane crashed every day, that would be headline news.
Of course.
In America, about 190 to 200 people die a day from fentanyl overdoses. So that's the equivalent to a jet crashing every friggin' day, and no one says nothing about it. I mean, people do, like the people that care, but like there's a blind eye to it, you know?
And there's a lot of distractions where you don't have to focus on that. The distractions are just getting bigger and bigger, and people love staring at the big glossy. Oh, you see what happened? Oh, aliens walking in malls and
Yeah, all
wars and
well,
all
they're
this good
dumbing down
stuff.
they're dumbing down the population. And you know, when I hear you talk and I see the people that you're connected to, and I see you and Joe, and I know Rob Schneider. I don't know him personally, but I know him. My editor in LA. So the guy
Yeah,
that went out with so the guy that's Rob's editor now,
yeah.
Paul Buell, does all the Sugar Studios, does all Rob's stuff. He was from South Boston. He traveled with me to LA and stayed there with Oxymorons. So
Mm.
Oxymorons brought him to LA, and he stayed there and became a union editor and is like doing big movies now and like doing everybody's stuff. So there's all these crazy things that came from this in a very good way. But when I hear you guys speak up and talk about these things, so many people around me after COVID, I realized are idiots. And I didn't realize how many idiots were around me. And it's like, you know, there's conspiracy theories and there's rabbit holes, of course, but then there's things that are just so in your face. It's like, how can you ignore this? How can you ignore that? You know, when the vaccine thing came out and everyone's like, well, someone literally said to me, well, it's FDA approved. And I'm like,
Oh,
they approved Oxycontin, you know? And then I started, you know, not until COVID, though, did I go down the food rabbit hole. Did I start
oh
research
yes,
what I've been giving my daughter all these years in her
yes,
cereal, and
yes.
like how ignorant and upset I am with myself for not realizing how much bigger the picture is than just the pharmaceutical drug itself. And then I watched the rehab facilities, the rehab centers where people are supposed to go and get clean off of drugs and alcohol. Now you cannot even open a rehab facility in Massachusetts and many other states, pretty much everywhere, because they've lobbied so much, without giving Suboxone or one of these other recovery drugs that are still narcotics. Still, I mean, not like Suboxone, for instance, tricks your brain into thinking you're high and literally blocks your receptors in your brain, right? So you have to offer this stuff to people now in order for them to rehabilitate. Now you go to jail and you get that stuff. So even if you're not on drugs, you're going to jail. You're like, oh, I might as well just get high while I'm in here. And you come out the revolving door into Methanomile, which is my newest film that I've been working on that's in post-production right now. And they just spit you out into these, you know, recovery drugs, these, you know, that just dumb down the population, weaken everybody. Look at the people that have been dumbed down. It's not just street criminals like me, police officers,
Everybody,
firefighters,
everybody,
everybody.
everybody.
And then if you follow the money, the companies that are being sued, and you know, like Purdue owes Massachusetts not like $1 billion, $900 million roughly is like their tax for killing millions of people, right? Like, yeah, we'll tax you for
Right.
killing everybody.
That's like
You know, no one's going to
that's
jail, but
right. It's like the drug companies. It's like even the ones that even made the shot. It's they were sued before this even happened for billions, trillions, and that's what people don't understand. $1 billion to them is a snot rocket. So if I go, we're going to make 40 trillion, we're going to get caught, and they're going to sue us, and so for $1 billion, we'll make $20 trillion, and who cares of the cost? I always say this. The most frightening thing I heard from a guy that works for a vaccine company said to my face when I asked him, what about the bad side effects? And he thought for a second, he went, the good outweighs the bad. And what that statement means is not the good as far as people going to be helped. What that means is they're going to make so much profit, so much profit. It doesn't matter the 3 people that died, or the people
nope.
that can't walk anymore, or the people that have. And again, I'm not saying that's what happened, but there's common sense and there's
Collateral
whatever
damage.
you believe. So
Collateral damage. But it's true. I mean, I'll say it, like it's in your face. Like the whole vaccine thing's insane. I mean, vaccines in general are insane. When you look at the chicken pox, like they want to give my daughter a chicken pox
yes,
vaccine. Why? I'm like, my
why?
mother put me with the kids that had chicken pox to catch it, and that was
Yes,
it. Why am I?
yeah. You
I'm like,
itched for 4 days and you had a couple scabs. It's over.
one of the things I tell other parents that have debates with me when I have like my parental debates with friends that have kids or whatever is next time the doctor, that's fine. You want to trust your doctor, the nurse practitioner now because you don't even see the doctor. Then
That's right.
ask them to name 5 of the ingredients in the vaccine that they're about to stick in your baby. Name
Yeah.
5 of them, and if they can name 5 of the ingredients, then go ahead, let them do it. And
Right.
if they can't, think about it. Think about that. Think about
Nobody
that.
knows what's in it. And that's the scary part of society. But I'll tell you what, Johnny Hickey, I thank God there's guys like you. There's guys like you. There's not a lot. There's guys like
Far and few
you.
between. We're far and few between, Jim, and that's why I reached out to you
I
because I
appreciate
heard
it.
you talk, and I heard Rob talk, and I seen the guys that and especially at your level of like success, and even mine. Have more of a cult following and stuff, but you've come such a long way, and I see other friends of mine that are pretty big celebrities out there that I'm connected to, and they're petrified. I know what they're thinking,
They're
but
petrified.
they're cowards and they're petrified to speak up because they don't want to lose it. And it's like, what is it all worth? If you're going to lose everything anyways, your children are going to lose everything. For this,
Everything for
everything.
money, for
It's true serious
vanity.
to
Yes.
not speak up.
Yes. I do think we're in the new phase of life where truth, common sense, spirituality, faith is going to overcome it all. I really do. I think too many people waking up. I love seeing young people tapping into real lifestyles, real life, and getting off the grid and walking away from it all. But um, this was this was a great hang. I'd love to see. Are you Boston or are you in LA?
So I'm in Boston. So I was in LA before COVID. Then COVID happened, and I got out of LA. Obviously, I ended up in Miami for the majority of COVID, where things were like normal.
Yeah.
And now I'm back in Boston doing things here. I just filmed Methadone Mile, which is another opiate crime. It's about where we are now,
Yep.
and it's about the companies that are giving these, rehabilitation drugs that are the same people that were invested in the drug that caused the problem in the first place, and to kind of show these things that are popping up in cities like Boston never had, a 5 block radius of homeless people living in tents. That
Yep.
didn't exist here, and now it does. So I'm constantly fighting things. I'm in Boston because I'm just strongest here right now,
Yep.
but I frequent back and forth to LA. I'm bi-coastal. I'm there to do my post-production, the networking, and all the games you got to play to get the distribution and stuff like that. But overall, I'm mostly in Boston now.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate that you reached out and what you're trying to do and what you are doing. I think I mean, we need guys like you to be inspirational because you're the real deal. I mean, you lived it. You're in it. You're still in it. So
I'm in the thick of it for
I'd
sure.
keep in touch, please. Let's keep in touch the way we've been keeping in touch.
100%. And when you come to Boston, I'll definitely come see you. I'll come check you out. We'll hang out
That
for
sounds
sure.
good.
I know you got a date. You have a date coming up with the Schubert or something, right?
I think I do, but I think it's
It's
April.
down the road. Yeah, it's April. Yeah, it's April.
If you're around, that'd be great. I'd love to. We'll have whatever it is, even a
Absolutely.
coffee, whatever, hang out, dinner. It sounds good,
We'll stay,
Johnny. I
we'll stay
appreciate you,
connected.
brother. Yeah,
And I appreciate you. Keep fighting.
I will. You too, Johnny.
Don't be scared. And I appreciate you, man, so much. We all do. Anyone that thinks like us, guys like you, we appreciate it so much. It means the world to change the world.
You as
100%.
well. You as well,
All
brother.
right, brother.
Take care, Johnny Hickey. Everyone. I think his story is enough to explain everything. And I'm telling you, guys like Johnny are those are the guys that those are warriors. I consider that is that's a life warrior right there. There's not a whole lot of them. There's guys that have been in wars. There's guys that have been through this, but Johnny Hickey, there was so much of that conversation that I thought was so powerful. Besides the even overcoming and being in that bed when he's with Galdafini and he knows he's got something that's going to change people's lives. He knows that even more, it may heal, which is more important. It's going to heal humanity. more than a lot of doctors, more than a lot of psychiatrists, more than a lot of things out there. And he's got the biggest star in the world sitting next right there going, I want it, but it's mine. And he held his ground. And because he knew in his instinct, he knew in his heart, he knew in his spirit, this was bigger than just, hey, I'm connected to a big star. Really beautiful story, man. Check out John Hickey's films. We all know people that have gone through exactly what he was talking about and what they're going through now. I know 2, and I can honestly say even 3 people now that have lost a child or a young adult to fentanyl. So, before you get hopped up and caught up in whatever new media, new entertainment, new thing they're trying to get you spun around and crazy in, realize that the harsh reality of life is they're going to come at you real hard. And thank God there's guys like Johnny Hickey out there that can met the devil, hung out with the devil, knows all his tricks, and knows how to show you and prepare for him and be aware of them. So with that said, thank you. And thanks to our guest, Johnny Hickey, for stopping on the Breuniverse. And I want to thank all of you for everything you do. And much love to you guys out there. You're going to need it. We all need it. Don't ever forget that. Keep it simple. Simple life. This ain't morally right. This ain't spiritually right. Keep far away from it. It ain't good for you. Have a good one. Jim Breuer, and I got my own Patreon page, and hopefully you'll check it out. Live comedy concert streamed once a month. Early access to the Breuniverse podcast every single week, and have bonus footage and bonus segments. I promise you I'm not going to let you down. Go check out my official Jim Breuer Patreon page, and I'll see you there.